Hello and welcome to the Selfish Podcast. In today's episode, we have Jackey Neyman Jones, and I'm excited to get to know her and hear her story, her journey of life. So, welcome, Jackey. Can you share with the audience where in the world you are and what time of day is it for you?
Let's see. It's 8:30 in the morning, and I'm on the west coast of the United States. It rains a lot.
Okay, nice. I don't know if you know, I'm currently in the south of Spain, and it's evening time for
Mm,
me. It's 5:30 in the afternoon, but I think it's beautiful we can connect in an instant. I'm always curious to know where the guests are from and even where the listeners are from. So it's always nice just to know how much
yeah,
reach you have.
yes. I talked to somebody from London a couple weeks ago, and it's interesting how, different times of day, but we can work it out that it's not uncomfortable for anybody.
Yeah, and when I was younger, I was fascinated with I never had one, but I was fascinated with the idea of a pen pal. And I used to think, oh, you could like write to someone in Australia or France or America, and months later you might hear back. And now, like, you can just do it in an instant. Seems it's like happened
Right?
so
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah, yeah, there was no internet or anything when I was growing up.
Yeah. What I like to do with my guests to get to know them a bit more is to go back a little bit and hear about their childhood. Can you paint me a picture of what was going on in your life, where you grew up, what your parents did pre 10 years old?
Uh, Before 10, yeah. I was born in Fort Worth, Texas, and I remember as a 3-year-old, my father coming home. He'd gone to um, Dallas to see President Kennedy, and he got home. And as soon as he got home, the news came on that President Kennedy had been shot. And I remember that still, even though I was only 3 years old, because it was so impactful for
Well,
everyone here in this country.
yeah, well, I heard recently someone say like I don't know what they called it, but they called it these moments in time that people remember where they was, what they were doing, and it was JFK, 9/11, and when they first heard about COVID, and that was like
Yeah.
these things set such an imprint. So yeah, that you even remember that as young as 3 years old.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. 9/11. Yeah, that was so many people know what they were doing in that moment. I remember where I was as well. But yeah, so I was 3, and then when I was 4, my family moved to El Paso, Texas, which is in the Southwest. It's in the desert, right on the border of Mexico. And El Paso is literally on the border. We used to go over into Juarez, Mexico for dinner, a couple times
Mm.
a month. And I remember as a freshman in high school, my mother was a teacher, so I remember at least once ditching school and walking over the border as a 13-year-old girl and hanging out, all day on the streets of Juarez so that the truant officers wouldn't catch me.
Nice. There's one way of doing it.
Um, yeah, I think I was lucky to survive a lot of risky things I did growing up. But then, let's see, so from 4 years old to a teenager, we lived in El Paso, and my father was executive director of the South El Paso Boys Club for his job. But he was also an artist and had this wonderful studio space, a little rock house in the backyard. Um, we lived in a house that had been built in the late 1800s. It was foot wall thick adobe, built for the Southwest, for the desert and the heat, because it holds coolness better. So this little rock house was his studio, and he was also very involved in local theater. So I grew up watching him in his studio. He did everything from painting and sculpting in clay. He had a welding torch. He made things from metal. I remember coming home from school, my mom bringing me home from school. And she was doing laundry, and she went out to hang the laundry on the line. And one of the laundry poles was gone because he needed some material for a sculpture he was working on. So he went and he cut it down with his welding torch. My mom was not very happy. Uh, so he was involved in theater. My mother was a teacher, but she was also very creative. She sewed, and we were practical people. So she made most of my clothing growing up, but she taught me to sew, and I took classes. And so when I got older, I started making my own clothes so I could wear the latest fashions without having to spend the money or, without having the money to spend. And, but in the theater, my dad he was awarded Best Actor of the Year award 4 times during the like 10 or 12 years that we lived there. And this one play in 1966 in particular, he played the role of Henry IV. In the play Henry IV, he played the lead, and he won Best Actor. And in that particular play, there was a guy who had written a script for a movie, and nobody was making movies in the Southwest in those days. And
Mm.
this guy wrote this script, and he looked around and saw everybody he needed of the male characters to fill the roles of his film. So he invited all these guys, and they accepted because, they're actors. Why not? And anyway, we'll go on into that later in the interview, I suppose. But
Yeah, so no, it's really fascinating to, like you said, because there's such sort of diversity and creativity around you at such a young age, and it makes me think like, and it's also with your mother being a teacher, like in your school life, and you said you was truant and escaping school sometimes. So how was school, and how was school having like such an artistic parent and a parent that's also a teacher, and how was your school life?
well, it was challenging because we lived in El Paso is largely Hispanic, and we're not Hispanic. My family bought a home in a lower middle class neighborhood, and we were the only non-Hispanic family in the neighborhood. And especially in my elementary school, I don't really recall any other kids like me. And
Mm.
so I was kind of bullied, and I felt outcast a lot growing up. And I was on my own a lot. I was a very independent kid. We lived right up against the mountain, uh, and the mountain that Mount Franklin, it had a road around it called Scenic Drive up at the top, and a lookout so that you could go up there at night to see the city lights, and to you could see the dark ribbon of the Rio Grande River and the different wattage of the lights across the river in Mexico. It was just beautiful. And
Oh, yeah.
so I'd climb. Sometimes I would spend my days climbing the mountain, just spending the day on the mountain. And I was always such an observant kid, so I'd find shells, from ancient times when water covered that part of the world, and I'd find crystals and all kinds of things, and I've always been that kind of a person, very observant. I was kind of quiet, so I just picked up a lot of information. But my dad's art was he did a lot of very large paintings, and he was a very deeply emotional person, and there's a real darkness about him, so it came through in his art. But he also did a lot of nudes, and so some of the kids, they befriended me, and I kind of figured it out. But so some of the kids, I had a few friends, but some of them befriended me so that they could get inside our house. They just wanted to see what we had because it was so different from their homes, very strict Catholic
Yeah.
homes. And then there's our house, where we have Playboy magazine on the coffee table, in the front room. So So yeah, I was kind of an oddity, and as I got older, I just embrace that. I know I'm different, I'm unique, and I celebrate that. I'm an artist. I've been self-employed most all of my life. I raised my children as a single mother with my art, my talent. I did high-end faux finishes, interiors, wall treatments, murals, plaster, all kinds of things for almost 30 years.
Oh, nice. And that's what my next question was actually going to be. Like, what was your sort of first dream and ambition? So I'm curious, was that something when you was a really young child that you knew you wanted to do something in the sort of creative sense? Like, do you remember your first ambition or dream or thing you wanted to do, be or become?
Yes, I always wanted to do art. I always wanted to be an artist, and I was very interested in acting because with my dad rehearsing or working, and later he became executive director of the theater, so he was there all the time, and I knew every corner of that place. I just loved it. I That's how I learned to read was running lines for my dad, and so yeah, I feel very very fortunate that I've had a lot of opportunities, and now because of that crazy film that my dad made back in 1966, they needed a child. So my dad had one of those, and I was 6 years old. So I was the little girl in the movie, and they needed a dog, and we had a dog with the right look. We had a Doberman. And although he had the right look, you could tell he wasn't a very vicious dog.
Yeah.
He just wanted to play and wiggle. He's so cute. Uh, um, my mom made costumes, and my dad did all the sets, the props. I mean, a huge part on it. The director, producer, writer guy really found the right guy. But
Oh, no.
the name of the film is Monos, The Hands of Fate. And if anyone in your audience that's heard of Mystery Science Theater 3000 has probably heard of this film, or at least they understand that it's got to be a bad movie if they're showing it, because that's their specialty, Mystery Science Theater.
Okay, nice, interesting. And what was your sort of memories being 6 years old and on some sort of film set and in that area? What was your feelings at that time of what was going on?
Well, it's great. It was the whole thing was so low budget and such a small cast and crew that cracks me up every time I see it. The end, the credits are inflated with made up names to make it look more professional. There was maybe 15 people involved altogether, but it was shot in about the space of 8 days, nights and weekends mostly. And so and it was out in the desert at this old house, and pretty remote. So if I was in any of the scenes for the day's shoot, so I was there for the whole time basically because he was the lead. So and I was in a lot of the scenes. So I was there a lot, and I just found it really interesting being the only kid on set and being left to myself. So you can imagine a 6-year-old out in the desert at night doing whatever she wanted. And if I got tired, I'd take a nap in the back seat of one of the cars or something. But
Oh, nice. Yeah. And then it also makes me think like when it comes to sort of creative arts, whether that's painting, movie making, or a musician, or any form of sort of art where someone says, I'm going to do that for my career. Often they're met by a lot of obstacles of other people saying you have to follow a sort of certain structure and format, and that's not a real job, or that's not what's the word? It's not got enough not foundation, but consistency in workflow, and that gives a
yeah,
lot of fear to a lot of people. Did you? And
yeah.
you said it sounds like your mum was artistic as well. So did you notice with their relationship? Did you learn anything from how they managed to like be together while one of them's highly creative? Or was it because they both were?
Well, my mother is definitely more academic. I mean, she came from a family of educators and teachers, but she was very creative. And I mean, they divorced. My dad ended up moving to California, and I followed him. So I left my mother and little sister behind and went to California, and continued being artistic. And I was fortunate to a school that had a very strong art and drama department, and those are still to this day some of the two of my most influential teachers. Mr. Tackett, who was my theater teacher, drama teacher, um, he was I think at that time, he was like a sixth degree in black belt in karate.
Hmm.
And he had studied with Bruce Lee. So
Mm.
he was a wonderful teacher, and we do Tai Chi in class to relax and to, he really helped me grounding in my life as a teenager. My father was very depressed in those days and suicidal, and so it was hard. It was tough, for me. I've always been so independent, and you say, that finding a career or doing something of having a passion for something that's not mainstream is can be difficult because you end up with a lot of doubt about yourself and other people question you. But my independence and stubbornness, I think, is what really got me through. Is that it's a positive and a negative that I do best when I'm under some pressure, when I have that "well, I'll show you" attitude, which, is I don't have to live that way all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm learning that. I mean, I'm almost 63 years old, and I'm finally realizing that I need to give myself a break, and every now and then I can step outside myself and see just what it is I'm accomplishing when I feel like I'm so scattered. Because yeah, just finding that I had some health issues this last year that were really surprising because I've always been strong and healthy. And so it was a real wake up call that living under putting that kind of pressure on yourself all the time is just not good for you. It's not good for your body. And there's just so much more I want to do. So I'm learning how to cut myself a break a little bit. But in the meantime, I've been saying this for a while that I'm at this tipping point. I've had several successful businesses, but right now things are just really taking off all at once. And so I just keep telling myself, keep breathing, just breathe. It's okay. It's like be careful what you wish for because you're getting it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because what comes to mind is, and it's relevant to a few of my recent podcasts as well, is what you were saying with the teacher that you had, that you was doing Tai Chi and, certain martial arts sort of practices to ground yourself. And part of my daily practice is I do forms of Tai Chi and Qigong and things to center
Nice.
myself. And a lot of people look at, say, martial arts and think, oh, you do that to fight. Um, I used to, I was influenced highly by Bruce Lee in my early life, and it
Oh,
wasn't
yeah.
it was actually the philosophy and to sort of you're learning to fight your own inner demons in a way, and learning
Yes.
to sort of get your body into a good state. And similar to you when you're saying about that pressure, I spent so many years feeling that I had to encourage myself, and I thought it was self-encouragement, but it was like an inner dictator, and I was whipping myself to do things.
Yes.
So ambitious.
Inner dictator. Yes, that's a good way to put it.
And I was so ambitious, but I was like, that's what's got me to do everything that I've done. So it must be correct, even though what I was doing was falling apart. But I was like, it would have been worse if I wasn't that way. And it took a long time, um, and life to fall apart even more for me
Mhm.
to get to a state of real isolation and realize that that inner voice isn't actually doing me any favors, and sort of kick it out the room for a while and say, you're only allowed back in when you're a nice, kind, compassionate voice that I want
Ah,
around.
I
Um,
like,
and
yeah, I'm
I,
finding my compassion for myself more.
Yeah, and that was like a big part of my process. Like I had to go through a whole development of inner self-love and then turning that into unconditional love for myself because I was so set on my expectations and I think similarly to you, so highly driven and ambitious. Um, but then that means you have to expect that you're gonna fulfill them ambitions, and if you don't, here comes another whip to make sure you do it better next time. And
Yeah, yeah, but if you're so busy doing that all the time, then you can't enjoy the ride. You
yeah,
know, are you doing it if it's not for the love of it? So, yeah.
yeah,
And another thing that woke me up big time was my dearest lifetime friend. I mean, we met in that drama class in high school, and Mr. Tackett, our teacher, I remember when she walked into class, and he me aside and on the stage, and he says, "You know, I have a feeling you two are going to get along." And we just like fell in love immediately. You know, we were inseparable best friends. We got in well, we didn't get in trouble, but we got away with a lot of stuff, you know. She was the one with these crazy ideas, and I was always the one that went, "Okay, let's do it," you know.
yeah,
And what adventures we had. But she died suddenly just like 3 weeks ago, and I've been going through pictures and boxes, and I just am finding pictures of us throughout like 46 years, and we've been part of each other's lives, and those special times, you know, weddings, graduations, births of our children. And you know, it's a real wake up call. I feel her with me every day. And so now I feel, and she was an artist as well, and it's just giving me even more determination to feeling I have this encouragement and support, you know, even though I can't see her standing in front of me, I know she's there.
yeah. No, and what comes to me, like, because I remember I wasn't friends for as long as you, because it was both you. I lost my best friend when we were 19. He died in a car
Mm.
crash,
Oh,
and
God. Yeah.
I rem I remember how sort of traumatic it was, but I was always, and I don't know how much you know of my story. Like I grew up with a lot of chaos in my home. My mum had severe schizophrenia, and she was
Mm.
a single parent, and we went through lots of poverty, and it was really stressful and made me
Yeah.
suicidal from a young age and depressed and everything. But it gave me a real heightened
Mm.
awareness to my environment, so I was really always analyzing everything. And I remember when
Yes.
he passed, and then shortly after, another one of my really good friends passed, and the second one
Wow.
was an open casket, and because he was Indian and they had a totally different tradition, and it fascinated me because I was just looking at how everyone's processing this death. But I remember looking
Mm.
at his body in the casket, and he's like 19, 20 years old, and they've sort of freshened him up with makeup and things. And I was just
Mm.
looking, and I was like, why are we walking around? That's not him. He's gone. Like that's his body. But it's
Yeah.
not him. Whatever he is isn't there. And that just gave me a little insight in my younger life to the like the body isn't what's important, but the life they are is important. And how I
Yeah.
reflect back on my friends now is I see it, and my mother passed really recently as well, and I look back and I'm like, what did I love so much about these people that it caused me some turmoil when they weren't around? Once their life's not there, what did I really love about them? And then I see
Mm-hmm.
that as whatever that was is what I'm meant to take and reflect back to others. So I would ask you, what did you love so much about your friend of 40 years?
Yeah. Wow. She was always there for me no matter what, you know?
Yeah,
And I was always, uh, but yeah, I'm just working hard not to have any regret that we weren't more in contact, because she had, in the year before, survived cancer, and she'd been going through a hard time, and she was just, I mean, I celebrate now that she was coming out of this. She'd her cancer was gone and she was moving us with friends. And she said she was so happy because they smoked weed, and
Mm.
she'd been living with her son and daughter-in-law and they wouldn't let her. Oh, so she's like a little kid again. And that's, yeah, what I loved so much about her was I was always the dark, depressed one. My father was suicidal, and that's why I moved to California with him, because I was terrified he was going to kill himself. So I moved to keep him alive. I made it my job,
Mm.
and I determined at that young age, like you, is that I didn't want to be here. If he was gone, I wasn't going to stay. Had I had a couple backup plans on how I was going to get rid of myself, and follow him. And yeah, and then Betty was always, no matter what, she always had this beautiful smile. She was always joking. She was always funny, and she balanced out the darkness of me, and I think I helped tone her down so she wasn't quite so bizarre
Yeah.
sometimes.
No, no,
I mean, we really felt like we were two parts of one broader being.
yeah, no, it's so interesting just because I can relate so much. My friend who passed, my best friend, he was like almost the complete opposite of me in so many ways. He was always smiling, like people like thought he's like this big teddy bear. Girls just wanted to hug him and be around him. They didn't want to date him so much, but they loved him. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was always the depressed, serious one. People thought I was scary or threatening, and I'm like, no, I'm a nice person, but I'm just a bit angry inside. And yeah, I've got a lot going on in my life, but I didn't express any sort of smiles. Um, and
Um,
and he just had all this, but he was also a bit careless, and he would do. The reason he died is he got in a car with a
mhm.
14-year-old, and they were smoking loads of weed, and they crashed. Yeah, but
Oh,
and
God.
I would never make that choice. I would never get in a car with a 14-year-old. Full stop. When we were like 19, but it's like
Yeah.
typical of his behavior. And it's
Mm.
part of like, and when he was with me, his parents loved it when he was with me because they knew that I was much more grounded and had ambitions and gave him that structure. And I look back now and
Yeah.
I'm like, I didn't get it at the time, but right now he's gifted me so much with the importance of that smile, that just
Uh-huh.
being a bit more flexible and free will and not do silly things, but not also hold yourself back to being so strict and grounded. And no,
Yeah.
and he became such a gift to my life. And I wonder
Mm.
if he didn't pass, whether I even would have learned that lesson. But because it was such an
Don't
impact.
know.
Um, and
Um,
he, so yeah, it's no, and like you said with your friend, maybe it's just reassuring you the importance of that smile, that joy, and that loyalty. It sounds like.
yeah, I mean, I see her a lot. And I told her son, I mean, like, she's just been around, and if I didn't get the message the first time, then she'll show another message. Like, um, yeah, so I sold my house, my kids. It's over 100-year-old farmhouse, and I have a back property that's attached to that property, and I'm living in the RV on the back property
Mm.
so that I'm near my kids and my grandkids. But so I walk between the RV and the house a lot. I'm over there almost every day at some point. But about, let's see, what was it? It was, I'm trying to think what the three things were. So less than a week after she died, I was walking across the yard and I looked down and there's this thing. I don't know if you've seen the cartoon. I think it's Rick and Morty.
I
And
heard of
Rick
it and
is
I
a
know
mad
what it looks
scientist.
like. Yeah.
Yeah, Rick's like this crazy mad scientist. Well, I look down and there's it's like glass. Somebody's made this glass figurine, and I don't know what it is. It looks like maybe it's a top to a bottle or something. I don't know, like a stopper, but it's Rick, and made of glass. And it was just laying face up on the pathway between the RV and the house. And I'm like, well, that's weird because there's never anybody other than the family on the property. I mean, nobody would just walk through. So I took it in the house and I showed everybody, that in the house and the kids, and nobody'd seen it. They didn't know what it was. I mean, they knew what it was, but they didn't know where it came from.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, that's odd. And it didn't occur to me. And then, let's see, what was it? A couple days later, I'm trying to remember. Oh, I know. It was St. Patrick's Day, and I was going to my studio. I had this beautiful room in this beautiful old building. I live in a town of 1,000 people, a very small logging community in Western Oregon. And so I was walking down to my studio, which is just a third of a mile from my house. And and on the pathway to the door, to the front door of the building, there was a painted rock with a shamrock on it, a green shamrock.
Hmm.
And I picked it up and I thought, that's funny. I mean, I've been painting and leaving for years. I live on a river. There's a beautiful river here, so I collect these stones and I paint them and I keep them in my pocket and I try to leave them. And when my dog was still living, we did it almost every day. So this is the first time I've ever found a stone that I didn't paint,
Yeah.
And I thought, so I picked it up and I still didn't get it. And then a couple days later, I'm walking across the yard again, and I look down, and there's this little round thing with it's green, and it had, I mean, it's beautiful. It was like little pieces of glass, kind of like tile on the back. It was round, and I turned it over, and it was a little mirror, but it had the green uh, frame and everything. And then I looked in it and it hit me so hard. I'm like, oh my God, it's Betty. She's fucking with me. And the other thing is that for me, my number is threes. I remember thing in threes, like lists, or I always find things in threes. There's certain, if I find something, I always know I'm going to find two more, know. But so there's three things. It was the third one. It hit me that it was her letting me know that she's still around, because the mirror, it was almost like she is saying, what do I have to do to get you to get this? Because I looked in it and I have green eyes. And that was one of the big things she always said through all those years. She always called me green eyes, and she'd make comments about my eyes because she had big brown eyes. And so here I'm holding this little green mirror looking at my green eyes. And it was a green shamrock. And then I go and I'm like, well, what's this little character thing? So I looked it up, Rick and Morty. And it was crazy because Rick is this mad scientist, and the things that he's interested in, that's her. She was very interested in science and space. And I mean, her dad had worked for NASA when she was a child, so it was just blows me away, you
Yeah,
know.
it's nice, and like I see that also as like it's like a message to you, like a don't let the sort of mad scientist in you get down from the situation, and keep your luck up, with the clover and the mirror to look
Yeah,
at yourself, and make sure you're
that's
keeping your
right.
eyes sparkling.
Yeah, and you just said that keep the luck out of it in terms of the lucky clover, but I was just thinking of it being green. But
Yeah,
yeah, a lot of, and my art is very symbolic. I love symbolism and I read a lot of it into things. I think things deeply like you do. So, there's always so many layers.
yeah, and I do the same even to minor degrees, like with my like YouTube thumbnails or posts or anything where I can do a little bit of creative art. I put Like I showed my love Danielle, and I was like, "What do you see in this?" And she won't see almost nothing. And I'm like, "No, that means this. This means this." And there's like at least 10 or 12 different meanings that I've layered in there in shapes, in colors, and what that I associate them to.
Mm.
And I said, "No, that's painting." She's like, "Oh, I didn't even know that." She goes, "Oh, that's really good." And I was like, "Yeah, but really, only I really know that. But it's nice." But like,
Yeah,
it's like you can put so much into something so small when it's personal.
you can. And even when people don't consciously off, or if you're on target and other people can feel it, it's a sense, when I did faux finish in people's homes, I know I know how good I am with color and balance. And there were so many jobs I did where I'd step back from the wall, and I'd have the client next to me and we'd both go, wow.
Do you have a website? Do you have a place where other people can see that your artwork?
Yeah, I have my Etsy store, a Facebook page called Jackie's Art.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, what type of art do you have on there?
Oh, well, for one thing, that movie I was in it's a cult classic. It's famously known as the worst movie ever made, which it's not, but the fans
Yeah,
love it. And the cloak that my father wore in the film is iconic, and my mother made it, so I make custom signed and numbered master's robes. He was the master, and I've sold 38 so far.
oh
I made
nice.
one for a guy from England who was 6'8". Yeah, then I saw, but then my art, I love reclaiming things that are destined for destruction, like old doors and old window frames. And because I live in a place that has a lot of those things, I started collecting them. I'd see them getting ready to be burned up, on a burn pile, and I would ask if I could have it. So I ended up with this collection of like 100-year-old doors and window frames. And so the doors, with my skill saw, I cut them into panels, and then the outside of the panel is the frame, and the inside I do a thin plaster, like Venetian plaster texture, and then I paint my art on those. So I start wondering if somehow I'm picking up something from its history, you know. Um, but if the paint is crackled and coming off, then I enhance that.
Quite popular now. I seem to see it's a growing thing because it makes sense to reclaim and to try and be more sustainable instead of keep creating new, fresh things and discarding so much stuff. I think there's a big market
Right.
now for people that appreciate the reuse value or something.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm looking forward to, I have this studio space for the last several months, and I've how things have changed for me so rapidly in that time, just having this wonderful space to work in. And interview podcasts, I can do I can do some filming in there. I can do all my art, and it's just. And then I also teach painting classes, so it has a nice big open space that I can do painting classes. Oh, I'm starting some online painting classes the end of this month, and getting subscribers, but they're mystery science related painting classes. There'll be 2-hour classes that I teach online, and
Um,
you can see that it's called the website is Dumb Industries, so DUMB dash industries.com.
oh, nice. I'll
And
make sure to put all them links in the description as well so people can follow up on them.
as soon as I find my keys and get into my studio, I will I'll send you a bunch of links. I'll send you these things through the email.
Yeah, nice. And I'm interested because it's like now with the last 2 years have affected everyone. I don't think anyone's managed to not be affected in some way. And
Yeah.
and like you said, I think part of that now has put you to be able to say do online work and stuff. But how has the last 2 years been for you?
Oh gosh, yeah, it's definitely been a challenge. I've had to reinvent myself. I was doing a lot of in-person parties, those paint and sip parties that became so popular at bars and restaurants, and had quite a few people. We were getting 18, 20 people in classes. And that was, yeah, it's, I don't know. You think back and you're like, I don't know how I got through, but I did. And now things are really looking up. It did help to get out of that big house and all the bills. I don't know how I could have continued doing that for the last 2 years, but yeah, I'm just looking forward to things being different. And yeah, it's been tough. Like for everybody, it's just been tough. It's been emotional and difficult. And I hate going places. You go shopping and you see people just standing in the aisles looking off into space, and the way people are driving. And it's strange. It's very strange times.
Yeah, it's been very interesting to just observe, and like you said, if you're really aware and you're watching things, it's just a very bizarre and interesting observation time to see things. Uh,
Right. And I am
but
an observer. So, hey, and I
yeah,
just found my key.
oh nice.
They were hanging on a hook where I never hang them. And they were literally just 2 inches above my eye line. Oh my God.
Nice what you found. We have like places where we put things because my partner Danielle, she's really organized, so she's like everything has to have its place. Whereas
Oh,
I'm
good
like,
for you.
what's the most efficient thing for me to do right now? Is just put something there next to me, and carry on because I want to be on to the next thing. I haven't got
Right.
time to go and
Yeah.
put it in the drawer. I'm like,
Well, that's
that'll take
it.
away a millisecond of my time. So it's just
Yeah,
always
because
like,
your brain is always on the next thing. That's,
yeah,
I realize it's not that I'm just so absent-minded. It's just that I'm always thinking of the next thing when I put something down, or like one time I'm talking to somebody on the phone and I'm searching madly everywhere for my phone. I'm like,
yeah,
where's my phone? And I realize, oh, I'm talking to you on it. You know?
yeah, yeah. Or you've got
But
some, yeah,
yeah,
you have
I
something in your hand and you're running around looking for what's in your hand the whole time.
yes,
You just know it's
yes.
just right there. Yeah, I started putting my keys in my back pocket. I thought, oh, that if I put them there, I was like, I always know they're in my back pocket. And as soon as I did that, every time I forgot that's what my new plan was. So I'd search every pocket, and then Danielle would say, "If you checked your back pocket," and then I'd look, I go, "Yeah, that's my place. I put them." And I stopped that.
Um,
I could never remember that's where I put them. It just did not work out.
yeah, I have one hook by the door in the RV, and I have one hook in my studio where my keys are always supposed to go, and I drill that into my head, and still, at least
Yeah,
a third of the time, I forget to hang them there. But I did, obviously, I put them on a hook last night, just the wrong one.
yeah, yeah. They still got put away. Well, I'm very very happy that you found them.
Oh, me too, because I have another appointment to get to before long.
That's nice. Well, we're coming very close to the end of the show. I have a few just fun, short questions I ask every guest on the end of the show. But is there anything particular that we haven't covered that you would like to share?
Oh, probably, but no, I think we did. I think we had a great talk. I really enjoyed talking with you, and it's interesting how many things do have parallel.
Yeah, no, like the aim of my podcast was to connect with people and share their lives because I've spent a long time sharing my life now on YouTube and what just processes that I've been through in my life. And I wanted to hear other people's lives and stories, and there was no criteria because I think everyone's unique and everyone has an insight. And I thought I'm not going to share anything because I'm trying not to come from my perspective or my feelings. But if someone brings up something that I can relate an actual personal experience to, then I will share it. And yeah, it's just been beautiful to connect with you on them levels and share them experiences.
It has. I interviewed with this lovely woman yesterday, Jury, and and she came from a very difficult and abusive childhood, and it's just really interesting talking to people in these different that have these different lives. And she said a similar thing, that one of the reasons she's doing what she's doing is she wants to hear other people's stories. It heals us all when we can find that we're not alone.
Yeah, and I think it's in our nature that if we didn't have, say, technology, we would you'd get all your life experience from communication with other people. You know, you learn from them, you share stories, we sit around the fire and talk and tell
Right.
tales or films or books. You know, all of it's about metaphors that we learn from. And I see a lot of
Yes,
people that go to
yeah.
professionals, and that can help to go to someone and talk. But I see also so many people that go, yeah, but they haven't had the experience that in any way that I have, and they struggle to relate because of that. So I think it's important that people just share their experiences.
Yeah, and that's something, God, technology, if COVID happened 20 years ago, how would well, we'd have telephone, but there's been times in the past, that there was no technology, and these horrible diseases and influenzas and things were killing all these people, and people were locked up and couldn't communicate. I mean,
Yeah,
these are hard times, but I've also, and I'm sure you have too, like right now, how would we be even having this conversation if not for the technology? I mean, I've connected with people around the world, and opened my own eyes about the different ways people live in a way that never would have happened if it weren't
yeah,
for COVID.
yeah. So I think that everything has its polarization. So there's always something beautiful in something disgusting. So it's like but we have the choice to look where we want to look, and it's
Yeah,
easy to
that's,
pick.
yeah. Um, let it go was my phrase last year. Recent ones, and yeah, it sometimes you just see something from a different angle. Everything has the potential to change for you.
Yeah, definitely. It's beautiful. I just have these few little questions and then I'll let you go. I heard you had another appointment, but these are like sort of one answer questions. You can elaborate if you wish to, but they're pretty much one answer questions. Yeah, do you have a few
Okay.
minutes?
Yes.
Yeah. So if you had to choose one, cat or a dog?
Oh, wow. That's hard. I mean, I lost my dog a year ago on March 15th, my sweet little boy. And my kids got me a kitten for my birthday in July. I miss him. I miss my little doggy every day so much, but I adore this little girl. I do miss my dog though. I miss having a dog. I like both. I can't choose.
Yeah, I always ask people because it's like it's such a hard thing, but I find everyone when it gets down to it, they're either slightly more towards a dog person, slightly more towards a cat person, even if they love them both. Um,
Yeah.
but I'll let
I've
you
had
off if you want. You can
yeah.
say both.
If I had room for a dog, I'd have a dog also. I'd have both.
Yeah, I'm more of a dog person and Danielle's more of a cat person, but we rescued a dog and then not long after we rescued a cat and the cat gave
Oh,
birth. We actually still have all the kittens. So we have five cats and a dog in a van.
oh wow.
So yeah, it's a little bit different, but no, they're amazing.
Yes.
But I am more of a dog person. There's just like, I don't know what it is about them, what they do to me, but I love the cats to pieces. They're amazing. Yeah,
Hmm.
I think that's what it is. A dog for me can just get away with anything. It's just,
Well, yeah. They rule the roost, the cats.
what's your favorite color?
Um, Green.
Yeah, nice. What excites you, gets you motivated?
Oh, music.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same.
I think about it more lately because I have a new friend who's deaf, and she can speak so I can understand her, but I don't know sign language, and I'd like to learn. But thinking about it the other day, we share books a lot. I give her
Mhm.
books, and I suggest films that have closed captioning, but um it just occurred to me the other day I was watching a movie, and how much the music, the background music, brings to film and to life. what I can't imagine what it would be like to have never experienced that.
Has she been like that since birth then? She's never experienced sound.
Right.
Yeah, like I suppose, but if you don't know something and you've never known it, then you don't know what you're missing at the same time, and it's so she'll find a sensation of beauty in something else in a different perception, I guess, than we ever would.
True. And just when you said that, that is true. I've heard that, some deaf people, they enjoy music through the vibration, the feeling of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I spoke to a couple of girls who were blind, and I was just
Mm.
curious. Sometimes I ask questions that someone else I think wouldn't ask because they
Yeah.
feel like it might be rude. Whereas I'm just curious. So I'll tell them, I
Yeah.
said, I'm really curious. I'm like, so when you was little, how did you play with things? I said, when I was little, it was all about the colors, they're so important, all these different colors, how it looks was
Yeah.
important. And they're like, no, no, it's all about the texture. And they said, or if you bang them together, for them, it was about the sound, banging toys together and how the texture felt is all they remember from their favorite toys. It was how it sounded if you hit it on something and how it felt made their favorite toy.
Wow. Yeah. How do
Um,
I mean, that's that whole thing about shift, changing perspective,
and then two people
right?
could have similar experiences. I'll show you. It was an actual true story, but I can't remember where I heard it from. And it was about an actual psychologist who had two patients, and he studied them for a long time. And they were two twin brothers, and their father
Oh,
was an abusive alcoholic.
oh,
And one of the brothers had become like a man of faith and would never touch alcohol, and one of them had become a hardcore addict. And he asked
mm.
them individually, he says, why? So he said to the one who's an alcoholic, and he goes, why do you think you're an alcoholic? And he goes, well, you know my father. That's exactly why I'm like that. So then he asked the brother who doesn't drink anything, why aren't you an alcoholic? And he goes, you know my father. That's exactly why I'm not. And he said, it's just perception, same experience, but we can take totally different things from it.
Yeah, we have choices and we don't have choices. I mean, we're predestined. There's some things that we just follow certain ways, but yeah, people can change. We can change our perspective, and it's like magic because sometimes it's just one little shift and it can change everything for the good or the bad.
Yeah,
But I'm leaning toward the good these days, and I'm just making these little shifts. I stopped beating myself up as far as becoming more together and organized. I'm just taking it little step by little step, and it's working, and I'm giving myself a break that as long as I'm moving forward, even if it's just an inch a day, then I'm okay with that.
yeah, no,
When I'm on the
definitely.
downside, on the dark side, sometimes, you got to isolate or do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself. But when I'm coming back into the light, that's when I know, boy, you better just get stuff done. I got my list and I'm checking stuff off and, you
Yeah,
know,
nice.
um, yeah,
Nice. And what's your favorite noise or sound?
my favorite sound. Ooh, water, a
Nice. And
river, 30-foot waterfall, just, a 5-minute walk from
oh
my
no.
house. And that's where my dog Shanka and I used to go all the time. It always, it just really, it's funny. The moving water grounds me.
Yeah, I think it's a
Huh.
very powerful thing. And like you said, it's a bit like if you went there and just sat there with your eyes closed and then, like imagine the perception of someone that can't see how that feels to them, the vibrations and the
Mm.
crashing of water and the sound and the same someone that can't imagine looking at a waterfall and not being able to hear it at all. All that crashing water
Yeah,
silent, but you can just see the motion. Like I don't know being
I don't
what they could
know.
be feeling and seeing from it. It'd be incredible.
Yeah, these are things. Yeah, I think I start talking to my friend Gail, my deaf friend, more. She's so sweet and open, and I feel like I could ask her anything.
When it's clear, like the same thing with perception, if it was a silent movie, for example, and you could look at someone having a conversation and go, that person's having a lovely, kind conversation by their body language, their facial language. I think for
Yes.
people, when sometimes we ask questions, they don't like if it was a silent movie, you go, well, you look angry, or you look like you're interrogating, and it's like you're going to get the wrong response. But I think if you come from a smiley, loving place, a bit like you said, your friend Betty, like I imagine she had a very smiley, loving way of asking questions, and it's like if you
Yeah.
come from that place, normally people don't get offended at all.
Yeah. Well, she was one of those people, she could just walk up to anybody and start talking. And there were a couple times when I was appalled, like, oh God, during the gas crisis in the late 70s, early 80s. She we went to a gas station and the attendant was obviously just overworked. There are long lines of cars. And she walks up to this guy who's much taller than her. And I don't know what country he was from, but he wasn't he wasn't white. And she like grabbed him by the collar, the not strong, but just kind of held his collar and started fake slapping him and said, "Why are the gas prices so high?" I mean, it was her joke. And for a second, I thought he was going to strangle her, you know? I mean, I physically stepped back. I was like, uh oh, we are in trouble now. And then he smiled, and I was like, wow. And then, then later I go, please don't ever do anything like that again.
Yeah, nice. Um, and what do you love about yourself?
um, I love that I'm willing to close my eyes, take a breath, and step off the cliff. Figure,
Nice. Yeah,
it's terrifying, but I don't accomplish everything I set out to do, but the things that I have done, I'm so glad that I wasn't afraid to try it, because some of them came out to be, they all led me to where I am now, is one step and another step. But if I didn't have that courage, I never would have got where I am now. So I'm happy to be living a life with few regrets.
nice. And what do you love to see in other people?
Oh, well, kindness. I love all the stories. I love seeing somebody just a simple kindness to someone else without expecting anything in return. You see those little moments where somebody will, they'll stand there longer to hold the door for you when you're coming in the store. Just thoughtful little things like that, and it can make your day. Who knows what another person is feeling, and to give them a smile or to, if they drop something, pick it up and hand it back. Just those little
Yeah,
things. You never know what a difference you've made for somebody. And that's the thing. You don't need to know. It's those
yeah.
people that do those things just because.
Oh, nice. And the very last question, what do you love about animals? Now, this could be the animals in the wild or pets or any way you want to perceive animals.
Yeah, I love that animals are instinctual and that they don't have particular judgments. With all the videos and everything, I love all these animal videos. And I just saw one yesterday that was amazing. It was an alligator climbing into a little cave, like in the rocks, where a duck and all her little ducklings were.
Hmm.
And it crawled in there and it snuggled around. They were all snuggling together because the mama duck had hatched the alligator egg, So the
And that's just
alligator
what it
thought that
recognizes.
was he thought it was mama, I mean, where I saw a video gonna let her cat in the house and there's a mouse sitting on the cat's back, like riding the the cat. And things like that, just unlikely animal encounters and relationships. Another one, a deer was, one of the trail cams are catching all these things these days. And you could see the deer is waiting and waiting. And here comes this little fat badger, her best friend. And then they walk through together. I just love the animal. I don't know. They just have this, it feels that they have more capacity to accept each other and even to go against their predatory instincts in some ways.
Yeah, nice. Well, that's the end of the show, and I really, truly appreciate you sharing and being open, and also bringing my friend's memories back to me so I could appreciate him some more. Not that I don't still think about him quite often. It's always just beautiful to remember him in that way as well. So thank you for that. And yeah, really enjoyed our conversation.
Well, thank you, Luke. I really enjoyed talking with you too. And I'll send you those links today. I may not be able to do it before my next appointment, but I will get them to you.
Yeah, no problem. I've got another interview coming up, so I won't be able to check it till later. So whenever you do will be great, and I will go check out your artwork as well. I'm really curious to see what you do.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, really enjoyed it. Please let me know when it comes out and I'll share.
Yeah, I will send you an email with all the updates later.
All right.
Have a beautiful day. I think you said it's early in the morning for you, so you got the whole day ahead. Have a good one.
Yeah, we have a good evening.
Will do. All right, bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for being here and listening to the Selfish Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Greenheart, and I appreciate you being here. Don't forget to check out my YouTube channel. Just search Luke Greenheart on YouTube. You'll find me. Check out my website, lukegreenheart.com. Have an amazing day. And stay tuned for more episodes. I'll be interviewing guests on their path of self-development, their paths of self, getting to know them in much more intimacy, much more depth, sharing and connecting with all so we can have a much more blissful, joyful and productive life together. All right, much love. Have a great day.